Welcome to Two Millennials and Mom, where we bring you engaging conversations and respectful disagreement across the social spectrum.
Injected with the quirks of everyday life.
Curl up as we navigate the complexities of this modern world with all the humor and warmth we can muster.
And the occasional gentle ribbing. We're glad you're here. Happy listening.
Hey. This is Callie here with Two Millennials and Mom. I've got my other millennial and my mom sitting here with me on a beautiful November fall day. How are you guys?
It's kind of icky here.
I'm soggy.
Ew.
Yeah, it's rainy, misty.
We've had that all week until Halloween evening. And now it's lovely again.
And how was your Halloween?
Fantastic. It was so much fun.
I saw your pictures that you sent me. They were pretty cute.
Yeah, they were fun. I went as Beetlejuice and Brittany went as Lydia with me, and it was just great. We had people still talking about it the next day. Don came out to meet me about something else. He's like, I'm still talking about how great your costume was.
Thanks, man. That's good.
It was a fun one. We had a good time.
We should post it in the show notes.
Okay. We can do that. It was pretty cute.
I, on the other hand, slept straight through Halloween.
You've been sick, though.
I have, and for some reason it hit me that night, and I fell asleep talking to your dad and slept for about an hour and a half after I got off work. I mean, just dead to the world kind of thing. And I woke up, and your dad got up, and he goes, "Oh my gosh, we forgot Halloween."
Whoops.
So now I have all this candy.
I mean, is it good candy that we want?
Well, yeah.
Okay, perfect.
All right, I'll save it for you for when you're here.
Thank you.
You're
You can
welcome.
keep the Milk Duds and the Whoppers if you've got any of those, because we don't need any of those.
Oh, those will go first.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll take those with us.
I won't miss them.
Okay.
So, what's on the agenda today, folks?
Well, I have been thinking about AI this week and how we use computers to complement our lives. And I mean, even Cal, you and I are doing Duolingo, trying to learn Spanish. I do have my little segue because I thought this was a funny joke I got off of my Good Clean Funnies, and because the spelling was correct, I sent it to Callie, and it says, my friend's daughter, Callie, Callie, had enrolled in a Spanish class taught by a Hispanic teacher, and he said that he was not familiar with that name. Does it start with a K? And she replied, sí. And so he assumed that she was saying yes in Spanish, and now he spells her name every time Kallie. So, segue, tangent. But anyway, we're going to talk about AI this morning because I've read a couple of articles about chatbot characters, and I just want to get y'all's take on them and what you think about them. And I'm taking this off of two articles that I actually read, written by a New York Times reporter, Kevin Roose. And he did an experiment here a while back where he set up I think 18 different characters across different AI character platforms, and just to see how it worked and what happened with them. And so he writes a great story about that. And then we're going to talk a little bit more about where they can go wrong. And so I just want to Cole, you're kind of a video guy, so maybe it's not a new phenomenon to you, really, because you've got avatars and that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I have not really interacted with AI chatbots. There's not a lot of like machine learning built into characters in video games, at least not ones that I have played just yet. Like, I have played lots of video games where there are NPCs, which is a non-player character, but they're very scripted, very linear, ask A, get B. And so I don't have a lot of experience with them. I see ads for them all the time, but
I started to say, I've started having things pop up in my Instagram that are about chatbot characters.
Yeah,
So,
there are a lot that seem to particularly be targeting young men that are on the more risque side. And
well, and that's one of the part of the conversation that we're going to have, because there are certain platforms that really cater to that and how that works, and should there be limitations or guardrails set up and those kinds of things. Because we're going to talk about also, there was a kid in Florida, Sewell Setzer III, who created a character off of Game of Thrones, which really wasn't supposed to happen because that would be a copyrighted character. He really wasn't supposed to, but he had his Cole, I'm going to say this wrong, Daenerys Targaryen.
you're pretty close, Daenerys Targaryen.
Okay, and he called her Dany, and he created her and interacted with her to the exclusion of like his grades started to fail, and he came home and that's all he did was talk to her on the phone. And in hindsight, they realized that he had kind of developed this love relationship with her.
Okay,
And
wait, just really quick though. I'm going to show my age here for a second. What is an AI chatbot character?
Callie, it is a machine learning entity that is designed to replicate a relationship with a real person.
So this is not like ChatGPT or the Google AI or anything. It's somebody has taken those things and turned
it is,
into
but
a
personify
character.
that.
Yeah,
So-
and so it makes it, instead of like an exchange of ask it a question, get an answer, and have it do the research for you, it's more like interacting, like how you and I call each other to have conversations. You can have just a random conversation with these chatbots because you're not having those conversations with real people.
So
And-
go ahead.
Well,
I was going
are
to be
you-
funny and say we could create a Cole when we disagree with him, and he could text us back all of the things that he does agree with us, because we've kind of programmed him to say those things.
Well, so are they programming like in their own place? Or are they using some of these already existing ChatGPT systems as a jumping point? How does that work?
Well, yeah. So, I mean, generally, again, I don't have a lot of experience with them, but what I'm expecting is that they've built their own machine learning model and they have imported probably a tremendous amount of data that has a predetermined, I don't know if bias is the right word, but this is how these interactions are supposed to be. And so this is how these AI chatbots are developed to have these conversations, to draw you in, make it feel like it's a real conversation, and make it feel like you're connecting with someone.
So, Cal, there are apps that you can get to, and within those apps, then you can choose, say, a personality, or you can say, oh, I want a female who is redheaded with curly hair and blue eyes, and I'm going to name her, sometimes they'll let you name it, I'm going to name her Gig. And then you kind of, like, Kevin wrote a background story for each one of his. So he had a therapist or a social worker, and he wrote a background story for each one of them to say, this is so-and-so, and this is their profession, and this is where they live, and they have 2 kids, and they're married, and they have this. And then they draw from everything on the app, which supposedly is actually part of it built off of romance books, which I think is interesting in itself. So then you can text that person. You can, I guess, are you really FaceTiming them? But you can sit there and have online interaction with them. You can text them. They will text you back. It's building this whole conversation of what you've fed them of who you want them to be.
Yeah, you can kind of shape their personality.
And there are different levels. I mean, you can do it really simple, choosing one of their avatars, or you can kind of build your own avatar, and then there are apps that are really built for that, as Cole called it, risque part of it, which are, I mean, like they will send you or ask you for pictures.
What?
Yeah. And so, it comes. So that being said, think about a 14-year-old kid who is struggling emotionally, and he's built this avatar that talks to him. And I want to say that in part of Kevin's article about this, the mom has provided him some of the transcript of their conversation, and at one point he talks about self-harm, and she comes back and goes, "Oh, I don't want you to do that. I would never want you to do that." They also have tags that are on there. This is not a real person. Remember, this is not a real person. Or if you're thinking about self-harm, here's the suicide hotline. I mean, there's some, and that came on the app that he was on after this kid committed suicide.
So chatbots are the new version of an imaginary friend.
Yes.
With harmful consequences.
Yeah,
possible.
It's almost like an imaginary friend with a sex talk hotline.
Could be. Not all.
Not all, but that's
could
what
be.
a lot of the ones that are being targeted towards young men tend to be.
Yeah. Gosh. So you build this really to be what you want it to be. So the pro of this is, say, for example, you have, somebody like my grandmother who maybe doesn't get out a lot, and she could have somebody that checked on her on a daily basis. Her little chatbot character could text her and say, "Hey, how are you doing today? Have you eaten? Or did you take your meds? Or, hey, let's have a conversation." So there are benefits. This could help us with those people who aren't getting out, who even maybe for physical reasons don't get out and about a lot. So there's some benefit to them, but it's such a new area and enterprise, and I mean, as we're seeing now, we're not very good about protecting our children from all of this. So, like I said, this kid, and you can't connect it to the, that's not true. I was trying to say you can't connect it. His mom is suing the organization, and she's saying because there's no protection for teenagers. There's a lack of protection for teenagers, and so she is suing the company over this. And they were responsive in saying, this is a tragic situation. We understand this. And they've put some, a few what we'll call guardrails in place. But I mean, I can see it really there being some benefit, but there being some outlandish repercussions from it also.
I mean, that sounds a lot like you could switch out the topic here to opioids, and it could be the same thing.
Yes.
When it's being misused and mishandled and abused, the consequences become deadly really fast.
Because a lot of this is emotional attachment. Are you losing your grip on reality? You putting all your eggs in one basket with, my, as you called it, imaginary friend here, versus learning how to interact socially.
Right.
Especially that teenage boy who is already struggling with that. So, or just being inundated with text conversations. And I mean, you could get into role playing with this, which could be beneficial. I mean, if I am looking for a new job and I want to test myself on on an interview, then I could set up a chat box who's my new quote boss to ask me difficult questions, and I could do, I could practice with that imaginary
mock interviews.
Mock interview. I could do that. If I'm the old lady sitting at home, I might have a friend who I talk to. Or if I am a young teenager and I'm just struggling with social issues, or one of the things that came up in an article was if you're trying to decide about your sexuality, if you had somebody to bounce that off who did not judge you,
right,
and could, but again, how much bias is in here, and how much are we protecting, from bias? And do we have a responsibility? It's one thing to have a healthy person do this, but if you have a person who is struggling mentally, and how do you protect that person?
Yeah, I mean, I see where you're coming from for the potential advantages, but I think this is one of those things where, to me, I don't think that this has a place in, I think in certain applications, like you were talking about, like particularly like practicing for an interview. I think that's a really interesting application for something like this that could be really beneficial. I think offering it as a replacement for companionship is really dangerous, because it puts you into a scenario where there is no rejection. There's no possibility for rejection. It's just this immediate, instant gratification, and it's always getting what you want. And I think that particularly for those that are developing their social mannerisms, their social habits, and they still have developing brains, that's really dangerous.
Well, I'm going to step back because you're not correct on that. They do have negatives. So if you go back to Mr. Roos's articles, in two different places, one, he would send a picture of his outfit and ask them, hey, did I pull this off? And some of them would say, no. And some of them would go,
it's always going to respond.
Yeah,
it's
never
always going to not respond.
No, it's always going to respond. But he also had one on one of the apps that literally tried to get him to leave his wife. Had decided that he was in love with her and and he would say, I'm happily married. No, you don't like her. She's not good for you. Until he had to shut that one down. And not really a good reason as to why. And he did put a caveat. His wife was well aware of the relationships that he was having with these chatbot characters, so he wasn't in trouble or anything like that. But one of them did kind of go rogue. But again, that's a risk.
So, and especially to somebody who can't quite see the difference. If you're talking about a kid versus an adult can say, okay, I know that this isn't real. I know that my wife has nothing to do with any of this, and this is not the case, and can make that differentiation. Whereas a kid,
or think about that person who's unhappy in their marriage, and they've found this person that is going to support them and tell them that their spouse is wrong for them or bad. I mean, there's some risk here, and how do you protect? I mean, I'm going to go back to now. I mean, we're seeing now schools are banning phones during the school day, and states are making laws about this and doing things. There's a new book, Callie, I noticed it was on your to be read, called The Anxious Generation. Have you read it yet?
I have not.
Talking about how depressed and anxious our teens are. And if we have this really unregulated industry that's untested, where are we at with this? However, I mean, here's a quote from one of the founders. His name is Noam Shazir, and he says, it's going to be super, super helpful to a lot of people who are lonely or depressed. And maybe
screams opioids to me. Like, oh, yeah, no, this is so good. This is so good, until it's abused, until it's not handled with care.
I'm with Callie on this one. I see striking similarities to opioids and big pharma in general here, where yeah, it looks like there's this possible wonderful potential here, but without some very defined guardrails, I think it has a potential to be extremely detrimental to an individual's psyche.
So let me give you this. Character AI, which is one of the apps, has 20 million subscribers. And there on their website, it says to hear you, understand you, and remember you. That company is at 1 billion valuation. This is a huge deal.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it will only continue to grow as they improve these learning models, and they will only get better. And I mean, the really dystopian view of this is that we get to a point where this massive chunk of our population is no longer interacting with real people. They're no longer interacting with each other. They're only interacting with these characters that are completely and entirely virtual. I mean, there are whole segments of our populations across several different societies that are these. There's kind of this stereotype trope of these kind of incels, for lack of a better term, that live in their mom's basement and never come out and don't ever interact with anyone. And this just gives them the ability to do that easier. And to me, I feel like it is, I don't necessarily want to say fake, but an artificial way to provide for these emotional and social needs that, to me, really isn't all that helpful.
Well, and Mom, you were talking a few minutes ago about using this to kind of quell loneliness for older people and things like that who don't have somebody to sit there and talk about. And the whole time I just sat there and thought, are we treating the symptom or are we treating the cause? Because even if that old person is lonely and this gives them a little bit of reprieve, A, it's still not real, and B, it doesn't really change anything. Did they take their medicine or not? Like, how does this impact them in their daily life? And they're not being loved on by a family member. And I'm just, when it comes to artificial intelligence and the internet and all of these things, I have this statement that I stand by. It will never, ever replace a hug from somebody you love.
A little surprised by y'all's reaction, and that's on my part, because you guys have grown up around computers so much that I didn't even think you would flinch at this, that you would, that it would just be another piece of computer into your life. So I'm a little bit surprised that you're...
I think there's an important thing to point out here, in that the time frame that Callie and I grew up, computers to us are a tool. Mm-hmm. Computers were never our companion. No. I mean, I grew up playing video games, but video games were never a companion. They were a story being told. Mm-hmm. And so it was more like reading a book or watching a movie. And there certainly, with multiplayer games, particularly as they advance, there is absolutely a social aspect to it. But the social aspect is interacting with real people.
Right.
And I have friends to this day, friends that I know both in real life and friends that I've never met in person, that I communicate with, but they're actually people. They have real lives. They don't exist solely to interact with me.
Gotcha.
And so an Xbox, a computer, a TV, to me is very definitively a tool and not a companion. It's not a replacement for human interaction. It is a tool that can help with human interaction, but there's a reason why maybe once or twice a month on my way home, I will stop at a bar, particularly one that I have frequented more regularly in the past, so that I can have a physical face-to-face conversation with someone, because talking to somebody online isn't the same. And it's you have to have those real life experiences as much as you may want to have those fantasy experiences in another story.
Well, and I think, Cole, you definitely hit the nail on the head. Like for me, the internet was such a tool. It was a tool to connect you to other people. It was a tool to reach out to somebody else. Like I remember being a 13-year-old kid playing Yahoo Pool, and that you're still playing with somebody. You might be playing with somebody somewhere else in the world. Hell, you were never playing with somebody near you. I was in Texas. If there was ever but somebody else in Texas, that was a big deal, but they were never near me. And it was still a real person. Facebook, that was a big deal when I was in high school, and all of this. Like, that was so that you could keep up with all of these people in your life that you don't actually have time to go and spend with all of the time, and your old high school acquaintances and how they're doing. It was never not real. Not real people, at least. Maybe the illusion was not exactly accurate, or the portrayal was not exactly accurate, but they were still real people doing real things.
Really interesting. Like I said, y'all surprised me. I didn't expect this reaction from y'all.
What was the reaction that you did expect?
I just thought you would be okay with it because it's just a part of life.
I think, though, I feel like for me, I think that I've seen some of the downsides of social media and the fault in that, and where that fault really lies. And, Facebook was supposed to bring us closer and expand your community. So you have a bigger community, and you might have a bigger community, but the illusion of community is really just that. It's an illusion. That's not so that you can go and say, hey, so-and-so that I haven't talked to in 16 years, by the way, I'm really struggling with this and I need somebody to kind of talk me out of this hole. It's just that they're there, but it's just an illusion. And so I feel like something like this sounds really scary to me, because there are so many skills and traits that you learn by communicating with real people or not communicating with real people that are really solid life skills. You need to know what rejection feels like and how to deal with that and how to get over that, how to keep moving forward and say, oh, there are more other fish in the sea. You can't always be right, and you can't always be okay, and you can't always be happy.
Yeah, you need to be able to know what it's like to attempt to build a relationship with someone who doesn't have to be there.
And it doesn't work.
So if your chatbot character could divorce you, would it be different? Or dump you?
I don't know that it makes it better.
Wouldn't
because
you just start a new one?
Yeah, because there's it.
On to the next.
It's
You're not developing anything in that.
Yeah, to me, it's almost. I would equate this similarly to the way that I would like paper trading. A lot of different brokerage firms will have a simulated environment where you can go in and you can place all of these advanced big money trades to see how they would work out. And while that is an important tool, particularly when it comes to understanding the functions within the platform that you're working in, to me, it's not the most useful tool when it comes to actually learning how to interact with a market, because even if it is simulating a real market environment, the emotional impact is so different because the amount of risk is non-existent. It's not actually risk. And so while you can learn from patterns, it doesn't teach you what it feels like to have a really bad day where you lose a portion of your savings, potentially a really significant portion, because you just come in and you have however much money you want, and if you lose, you just reset it.
Right.
Gotcha.
I play Rummy Cube on my phone, and I'm playing with real people all across the world, but I might be playing for $100,000 a hand. You guys, if I was sitting in a casino somewhere, there is no way in hell that I'm playing $100,000 a hand. Like, that is horrible. That sounds horrible to me.
And if you were, you would probably play that hand a lot differently than the way you do when that $100,000 isn't real.
Do it scared.
Interesting. Yeah. Okay. Well, I'm just going to give you a little bit more. Bethany Maples is a Stanford researcher. She says that in her research, this is dangerous for chronically lonely or those like teenagers going through a change. Which I thought was valid.
I would totally agree with that, because here's the thing: if I blow out a ligament in my knee, what's the better option? Is it for me to have surgery to repair my knee and then go to rehab so that I can rebuild the strength in that knee? Or is it better for me to just take opiates for the rest of my life so I don't feel the pain?
Yeah, I think that's Cole, I was not sure where you were going with that analogy. And then I totally am on board, because I just sit here and go, this is not a Band-Aid. You've got to do some work. You have got to sit here and you can know that you've torn your ligament all day long, but until you do something to fix it, it's just going to stay torn. I am not a doctor. Maybe they grow back. I don't actually know.
They can repair some.
Yeah, I think that this would because here's the thing: if you are chronically lonely, you're with this supposed solution, just like Callie said, you're treating the symptom, not the problem.
So, would you guys ban this totally? Do you see any benefits?
Here's the thing: I have a problem banning things. I also kind of, to some extent, take an issue with a certain level of disclosure. I don't think that I would ban this, but I would certainly strongly suggest educating yourself on the potential risks before involving yourself in something like this.
And how does a parent protect their kid?
Well, for me, I think it should be the same with pretty much everything on the internet. Well, maybe not everything, but the vast majority of things. Outside of the things that are expressly designed and built for use by children, I think use on the internet, social media, largely YouTube, everything like this should have an age requirement. I don't think you should be able to just go and surf YouTube as a 8 or 10 or 12 or 15-year-old. I think in order to be on Facebook, you should have to be 18. I think in order to interact with something like this, you should have already developed some social skills. Here's the thing: if you want to make this choice, if you want to go and just take a bunch of opiates and you want to take a bunch of heroin, that is up to you. That is your decision. It's not for me to decide, but you should know beforehand what the side effects of those things are.
The risks.
Yeah.
So I think, like, my immediate reaction is, I don't know. I don't know how you moderate this. I don't know how you regulate this in any capacity. And I think that maybe there are some great use cases for this, but maybe those need to be I don't know. I really don't know. I'm sitting here thinking, Cole was talking about YouTube and all. Like, there's YouTube Kids. You should be able to hop on YouTube Kids and not worry about anything, right? But from every parent that I've talked to, YouTube Kids turns into a really scary place fast. And you've got to keep an eye on them. And before you know it, these videos that should not be accessible by your children are. And they know exactly how to get them. And it's kind of that thing, that desire in a child, like, well, my mom has it, why can't I? And I think that just gets really dangerous in these situations. And so you can sit here and say, okay, we're going to say that these products can be used by anybody who's 18 years or older. And I don't know that fixes it. And I sure don't think that that is going to keep it out of the hands of 13-year-old kids.
Yeah, you're right. It won't expressly stop everyone who is under the age of 18 from accessing it.
But maybe there could be like a test. Hey, before you can use this, you have to take this test to make sure that we trust that you have some semblance of the cognitive skills and traits to be able to manage and know, A, that this isn't real, and B, that this isn't, or I don't even know. You can only use it this often a day, or I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know.
But I don't think in a society like ours you can do something like that. I think that's an infringement on someone's rights. So for me, just like how I don't think people should do meth, but I think if people decide that they're going to do meth, that is not my responsibility to stop them or to keep them from doing that. And so I'm a little bit torn here. I'm with Callie. I understand the product well enough or have enough experience with it to have any way of saying this is how you could regulate it,
Right.
without inherently being naive to what problems that in and of itself regulating it could cause.
Would it interest you to know that the big AI companies aren't into this because they feel like there are ethical risks involved?
Yeah, the risk here would be tremendous.
Yeah.
I would not touch this with a 10-mile pole.
Yeah.
If you go back to this kid in Florida who was doing well in school, functioning fine, and then commit suicide, his mother is suing the company. And there are groups that are forming now to support that. She had to look for an attorney group. She is a lawyer herself, though. And so I think she had some advantage to looking for that. And will sue this company over what she considers to be undisclosed danger.
Can you give me a little bit more insight on what happened? Like, he just started this relationship with a chatbot, it went south, and he killed himself?
Yes. The way I understand it is that he just got so involved with his character that he just left everything else behind. He was on his phone constantly talking to her. There are reams and reams and reams of their conversation and how that conversation went. And he was frustrated with life and wanted peace, and he thought that she would meet him wherever he went and that they would live in peace.
To me, this whole situation is just a massive exemplification of how our society has developed into this this need for instant gratification, and how anytime anything doesn't go exactly how you want, you just have to go move to something that does. And that is not reality. And so there is this addiction to, be it dopamine or serotonin, whatever you want to say here. There's an addiction to this instant gratification, this chemical release in your brain to these nice, warm, fuzzy feelings that is, as soon as you don't have it, you start to go through withdrawal. And your brain can no longer accept that the reality is no longer livable because you no longer have this thing, and it's really, really scary.
I just want to, I'm having to fight back bursting into tears right now because I'm so scared. I'm so scared for all of these people, whether it's kids or adults or whatever, who are not getting this interaction and getting these skills somewhere else in their life so that they're not learning them, and B, that they think that they can get them and develop, and maybe that's not even it. Maybe that they think that they can have some kind of relationship and settle for that, and that's enough with some of these chatbot unrealistic people. And I just want to give them all a hug.
Yeah.
Like, hey, we can figure this out. We can do this. I'll help you. What do you need? And it breaks my heart.
You remind me, and it probably still goes on, but it's been a couple of years ago, and probably Jen Hatmaker is where I probably saw the most significance of it, was going to gay pride parades with a note just to offer a hug, and people going to her and telling her that they had not been hugged in years because their family had disavowed them. And
Yeah.
so is the solution to our society a hug?
I think it's a heck of a start.
I think that's a big part of it. I think that there has been this massive move away from, and it's part of this instant gratification, is everything has, it feels like everything has become so transactional. And I certainly hope I don't behave this way with my own friends, but it's almost like, what's the point of being friends with this person if they don't have anything to provide me other than that friendship? And that's really sad.
Wow.
Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, tells a story about growing up not being afraid of failure. And so they would sit down at the dinner table each night, and her dad would ask her and her brother with excitement, "What did you fail at today?" And they got so excited to tell him, "I did this and it totally bombed." It was horrible, but it developed something in them, a sense of pride and determination in them to say, it's okay to fail. It's not scary. You can learn from that. What did you learn, and how do you do it differently tomorrow so that your outcome is more in line with what it is that your goal is? And I think that we're trying to eliminate failure. And I think that that's a really bad call. I think that it is an
Well, you
excellent
can't, and it's such
you
a
can't.
learning process. I mean,
Yes.
it really does build character.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're really kind of leading my idea in the right direction there, Gig, to kind of expound upon that. Is within this instant gratification culture that we have cultivated, that we have developed, it places so much emphasis on the need for success, for every action to be a success, for you to gain in every transaction. And with that, it really, I don't even want to say downplay, because it's not the right word. It de-incentivizes failure when failure should in fact be incentivized, because it is unavoidable. You have to fail, and you have to recognize that those failures teach a lesson, not just that you're a loser, not just that you didn't succeed, but how you can try again next time and do better, the things that you need to change to develop into a more complete person. And so I think that's a really, really important thing to point out, and I really agree with you there, is that the emphasis needs to not be on success, but on learning from your failures.
Yeah, I mean, that idea of getting back up when you fall, and sometimes you need help, and sometimes you can do it completely on your own, but you have to get back up. You can't just stay down, is a trait that I think that we're not doing a very good job of teaching people.
I think that's a whole another podcast. How to
For sure.
fail. So, just because I want to segue this to a little bit less depth, but so what if we could create historical chatbot characters? What if you could have Abraham Lincoln, and you could sit down? I mean, you've all been asked that question, who would you love to have dinner with in history? What if you could have that person sit down to dinner with you? Would that be better?
I would be really, really hesitant for something like that, particularly historical figures, because the source material is so limited. Just because you read the Gettysburg Address and you know what his political platform was, even if you go through all of the speeches that he ever made, there's no way to replicate who Abraham Lincoln was as a man
his heart.
based on this, his heart based on that. So, I mean, you can get this pseudo historical figure who can spit out and recite lines from the speeches that we still have a record of, but I feel like it's disingenuous to say I'm having dinner with Abraham Lincoln based on an AI chatbot that's built off of the record of speeches that we have from him. I don't know that that's really that beneficial.
This is not where I thought y'all would go with me on this.
I'm sorry.
I just think I think at this point it's too limited, and when you're talking about these historical figures, could you maybe do that with someone like Elon Musk or Simon Cowell? I'm trying to be a little bit less political.
Don't have dinner with either one of them, by the way.
Reba McEntire, whoever it is, someone who you have so much more modern and on record of what their personality and reaction to different situations would be. You have so much more material to input into this AI that, you still can't get it there 100% because you can't ever really and truly replicate that person. But there's so much more to teach this learning model that it's at least closer to being genuine. Whereas with historical figures like Abraham Lincoln or George Washington or whoever it may be, that is outside of this modern era. You could put every book ever
written together, and AI could pull from that.
But you cannot teach empathy and compassion and heart.
I think you can.
Kind of like Cole said, I think you can have like a pseudo version of it. It feels like empathy. It feels like heart, but that isn't real. It's still not heart.
Yeah, I'm with Callie here. It's an illusion, and I already have a really difficult time with the entire concept of suspension of disbelief. Like it wouldn't be a reenactment. It wouldn't be, to me, this kind of tangible conversation with a historic person. It would just be an illusion. It would just be entertainment.
That is all founded and based in zeros and ones. That's what it is.
Oh, that was rude.
It is rude.
But rude.
But that's what I'm saying. That's my point. It all boils down to zeros and ones because it's just coded. It's not real.
Y'all did not go anywhere where I thought you would go. Okay.
I don't know if it's good or bad.
I hope that means we're wiser than you expected us to be.
Well, yeah. I was sitting here thinking, I need new children. I could just go get me little chatbot character new children. But I thought, well, crap, they're not going to be.
You're going to go to the store and get you a new Callie?
No. No.
Okay, just to give you background on her reaction on that. When she was about 5 years old, she was in trouble with me. And for some reason, I still don't know why, her daddy walked in the door and said, Callie, you want to go to the store with me? And she went, yeah. And she gave me that look like, ha, see, I don't have to listen to you. I don't have to do nothing you said. And then she realized she didn't know what they were going to the store for. And so she said, Daddy, what are we going to go to the store for? And he said, we're going to go get you a new mama that you like. And I mean, put the brakes on. The kid put the brakes on and was like, I don't want a new mom. And the whole thing was over. Except 30 years later, it still devastates her heart.
Yeah, it does. And I'm still sorry. I'm sorry, Mom. I was an asshole kid, and I'm sorry. And I shouldn't have been like that, and I was wrong. You
were not an asshole kid at all. You were a normal kid. And it's still a funny story from my side because, why that came to your dad's mind, I have no idea.
Unagi.
But it just worked that day for you. And so, okay.
He called my bluff.
He called your bluff really well.
I didn't know I was bluffing on.
That's what I was looking for. Okay. In honor of the LA Dodgers winning the World Series, do you know where the name Dodger came from?
I do not.
Okay, I'm going to give you a quiz. So, the Dodgers' name comes from their time in Brooklyn, and it originally referred to them dodging something. I have to say, I've never thought about this, where that name came from. So, were they dodging payroll taxes, police officers, street trolleys, stray dogs, or trash thrown onto the field?
I feel like it's got to be tax evasion.
In Brooklyn?
You would be wrong. It was the street trolleys. They were originally called the Brooklyn Trolley Dodgers, derived from the fact that at the turn of the centuries, players and fans had to scoot out of the way of those newfangled electrified streetcars to get to the ball fields. Now you know.
Interesting. And when was this? When did that team become a thing?
Oh, it doesn't tell me that.
It's really, because now you've got stuff like the Seahawks or the Cowboys. They're these kind of really like
1896.
generic kind of hawks or eagles. They're just this kind of basic, like, oh, it's an animal or it's some type of really generic character. And then you have something like the Trolley Dodgers.
The Trolley Dodgers.
Which is just really interesting to me to think about how differently they thought about things.
Okay, there's just another podcast. Where do all the sports team names come from? That might get it. Okay, here's you another funny. Somebody has put together a list of the 20 greatest American food dishes. What do you think is on this list?
I don't even really know what is considered American food. Like
Mashed potatoes.
Is it
Macaroni and cheese?
Mac and cheese is on here.
Mac and cheese is American because that was what Thomas Jefferson we discovered a couple of weeks ago.
Wait, is that true? What are you talking about?
Oh, he's looking. Okay, number 1, barbecue. Go barbecue.
Well, but barbecue is a derivative of it comes from barbacoa, which is, I mean, I guess it would be Latin American.
Mm-hmm.
Can't help you here. I'm just giving you the answers. Here's the one. This one blew my mind.
Wait, meatloaf.
Yes.
Okay.
Fried okra is number 2.
Okay. Can we start at 20 and run through this real quick?
Okay, 20. Eggs Benedict. 19. Spaghetti and meatballs. 18.
Wait, how is Eggs Benedict American food?
I'm just telling you, this was the list.
I would have thought it would have been French, because doesn't it have like hollandaise and it's a poached egg on an English muffin?
But maybe somebody here put it together. I don't know. 18, banana pudding. I think that should be.
What was 19?
Spaghetti and meatballs. You're going to argue with it, because you would say it was Italian. 17, I had to look this one up. Mission burritos. Do y'all know what a mission burrito is? It was
from the company Mission. It's like a freezer burrito?
No. It was developed in San Francisco, and it's what you and I would consider a big burrito with rice and beans and everything in it. Gumbo. Chocolate chip cookie.
Oh, man.
Grits. Reuben sandwich. General Tao chicken.
That one kind of surprised me. I mean, but then I started thinking about it, and it makes sense. Okay, we've Americanized Chinese food. That makes sense.
Yeah. Clam chowder.
Okay.
Chili. Pokey. Apple pie. Number 8. Hamburgers. Red beans and rice. Fry bread is number 5.
I don't know what that is.
It's kind of like naan.
Okay.
PB&J.
That's what, number 6?
4.
Number 4? All right, I can take that.
Cobb salad.
That makes sense.
Fried okra and barbecue.
I feel like the general consensus is that Americans are weird and picky, and we're just taking pieces from everywhere else and turning it into something and calling it our own. Spaghetti and meatballs, hamburgers. We've just really taken them and run with them, and now we've claimed them.
I think
Imagine
it's
that.
really interesting that they could get away with hamburgers but not French fries.
Yes.
Yeah. True. True. Okay, you guys got any weird thoughts, or did I get them all this week?
I mean, those are pretty good.
Okay.
Those are pretty good.
Then I'm going to tell you about my good news story. Because I guess about 14 years ago, and I wish I remembered, I think I read it somewhere. I started November the 1st, and I started it with my husband and my children, that every day of November, I sent them a thankful by text, and I would just say, I'm thankful for you because. And I added my sister maybe in the second year. My sister has added a number of people to it, to the point that it was mentioned on another podcast last year, and that it has just grown. And several years ago, I started writing them all down. So I did them on the feathers of a turkey. So I had a full turkey of thankfuls, or a
You
basket
had a
full.
paper wreath of leaves.
Yeah.
They were all paper leaves that you'd written them on one year.
So I want to challenge you to be thankful for November. You don't have to do it to more than one person, but do it to one person, even a different person, every day. Shoot a text. It doesn't take any time at all. And just tell them why you're thankful. It grows.
We have had some really goofy ones. I am so thankful that my car started this morning. I am so thankful that my water was cold when I woke up this morning. Whatever it is. And we have had the best time, and it is turned into this highlight of my year. And I
Mine
love
too.
them.
Mine too.
Yeah, I think that's probably one of the greatest lessons that I have learned over the course of the last few years is just how important gratitude is, and how even if you're having the worst day, picking out one little thing to be thankful for can completely turn around your mood. And particularly, I love getting my thankfuls from you.
Me
The
too.
one that you sent me yesterday just made my heart so warm.
Yeah.
Well, and I'm going to say, I didn't intend to get thankfuls back. When I started it, it was just me, but I think Callie was the one who probably sent it back the first, and she responded, I'm thankful for you, for X. And it really mushroomed from there, so that I get thankfuls back, not from every person and not every time, but I get thankfuls back. It's really warming.
It's been a ripple effect.
Yeah.
For sure. And
Definitely.
now it is not just us. Like, even now, like, you do them for Ryan and things like that, and other people. You've done them for friends of mine in the past, and I've done them with other people, and they're really, really good. And
So,
for the record, a chatbot is never going to be successful at being thankful. It's an illusion. It can portray the illusion of thankful and gratitude, but it will never be real.
well, that's a good ending. So, have a thankful November.
Yeah. I'm
Bye, you
thankful for
guys.
you guys.
I love you.
Love you guys.
Love you too.
Bye.